their general policies. That's a very brief intro to who we are. Amaha is a consulting company with whom we partner to bring a series of discussions to you, panel discussions, interviews, and so on, to the larger public on various aspects of mental health. Now, we have with us Serah Koshy, who is a consulting psychiatrist with them and who has been with them for more than 5, 6 years now. Her combination of having been a teacher and being a practicing psychiatrist is actually what makes her an ideal person to help us understand, to help us unpack what self care is, to help us understand what it is. And I will tell you, in our discussions to prepare for this, our goal has been unilateral. Our goal has been people need to understand it, but people need to go away with one practice, one habit, one thing that they can do, and so they can see the impact of self care in their lives as they go ahead. So, without too much further delay, we'll step right into it. I'll give you a very, very brief overview into what the next 1 hour or 15 minutes is going to look like. We will step into the discussion to talk about self care, what it is, what it means, how do you interpret it, how do you practice it, and a number of other practical questions around that. We will then close with a Q&A session. We will introduce Amaha to you a little more, and that will be our session. We will be recording it. We have received some questions in from some of you. So towards the end, we will take those questions. We will integrate as many of them as we can into the conversation. The others we will take up as a separate Q&A session. Right. So without further ado, Serah, good evening. Nice to be
Good
talking to
evening,
you.
Shabaz. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry, very, very quick clarification. I think in error you mentioned I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a psychologist.
This is something that I know I
Classic.
definitely get quite often, right?
Yes.
So happy to be corrected, but maybe if you could take a moment to make that clarification for everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. The easiest way to understand the difference is a psychologist cannot prescribe medication. The doctor or the psychiatrist has got a medical degree in addition to specializing in psychology and psychiatry, which means that they understand both the medical aspect of it. They understand how the body functions, they understand the physiology, the body chemistry, as well as they have a deep understanding of mental health disorders. So they can amalgamate the two and able to help any individual who's struggling with these concerns with the help of medication as well. A psychologist, on the other hand, is not qualified to prescribe any medication, but they can definitely understand what the different disorders are, and they work with the talk therapy treatment of the disorders as is relevant.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And if that confusion comes up again, I know who to turn to for a clarification. All right. So maybe we could just start off by I'm a traditionalist. I believe we first define the problem before we try and solve it. So let's look at what self care is. I mean, I know it can be understood, and it is understood at more than one level. There is the level at which international and national organizations like the WHO or the UN and they address it, how they understand it, and which is good to know. And then there is the level at which lay people like us, those of us who are on the call, and me, those of us who have read about it, heard about it, what does it mean for us? So if you could maybe talk about both those aspects and help us understand what it is we're talking about.
Right. To put it very formally, let's start off with what the formal definition of it is. The World Health Organization has defined self care as the ability of individuals, families, communities as well to be able to promote health, prevent disease, maintain wellness, cope with illnesses and disability, with or without the support of a mental health professional in that process. So it's about maintaining health, promoting health, right? Trying to prevent disease as far as possible, whether you do it on your own or you do it with the help of a qualified professional. So that's the very formal, let's say, definition of sorts for for self-care. What this means is essentially is that with self-care, identifying that you as an individual have a lot of agency in your life to be able to take care of yourself, to be able to take the necessary steps that's required to ensure that you are able to support not just yourself, but also the community at large. Right. And this is really important because the statistics around mental health are quite staggering across the world, right? We have research and statistics that show that 1 in every 8 people across the world live with some sort of a mental health disorder. And within India as well, there is not a lot of psychiatrists that we have, or psychiatrists, or even qualified mental health professionals who are able to help bridge the gap that we have between the prevalence of mental health and those who are qualified in treating or helping individuals get over these concerns. So, being able to do whatever you can in your capacity to maintain health is really, really important. We're able to understand this very well in the concept of, say, physical health, right? We all know that we have to eat our meals on time, we should drink enough water, we should do exercise regularly to ensure that I don't fall sick. Those three things are kind of understood. But if we can try to extend this beyond just physical, right, and also incorporate other aspects of self-care, to have social self-care, to have mental self-care, to have spiritual self-care, it embolizes the whole concept of self-care becomes a lot more holistic. Self-care as a concept in general has also been very misunderstood. Right? A lot of people tend to believe that self-care is all about um, expensive holidays. It's about spending time at the spa. It's about really spending money in a large way on yourself, and that's the only definition of self-care. That is the great thing about self-care is because it's so personalized. It can be anything that you do for yourself that rejuvenates you in some way. It could be sitting in a quiet space and drinking your morning brew. It could be ensuring I take time to focus on my exercise. It could be ensuring I take enough water in the course of the day. It could also be that I spend time nurturing my relationships with my friends in other cities, right? All of these could be different forms of self care. It's not necessarily about spending large amounts of money or pampering myself in that sense.
Um, wow, that's quite a bit. Two things I'm taking away from what you said. One is that in the news, when we read about government agencies or NGOs or anyone focusing on self care and bringing in support systems, so that doesn't necessarily mean it's one on one. It's not the kind of support that I might want for myself. It's really at a societal level or a community
Mhm.
level, and
Mhm.
therefore in that sense the self-care that agencies might talk about is a little different from the self-care that I might talk about for myself. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes, yes. There'll be different kinds of self care. So, what I have an access in terms of a formal institution is one of the kinds of self care, and that could also help in certain aspects. But there could be smaller things that I'm doing in the course of the day for just myself that doesn't involve anyone else. And that's just as valid as anything that an institution provides.
Okay. The second thing I'd like to clarify is you mentioned some statistics and for how the numbers are just going up. I'm sure a lot of people want to know what is it that's driving it up, and that is that will also lead back to a concern that we keep hearing about when we talk to people about self-care, which is that yeah, but no one ever needed it earlier. My parents didn't need it, my grandparents didn't need it. Why is it that suddenly I need to go and spend time on myself? And we see the conservative or the people who don't buy into this model also talking about that's a weakness, that's an indulgence. So if you could help us understand also what is it that's making this come center stage now for us?
That is a question that I've heard quite a lot. It's quite a loaded question as well. There are so many aspects to that question. I think for me, the way I understand that problem itself is that the parents or the grandparents' generation before us, times were very different, right? Times that we are living in right now are very different. We honestly have constant stimulus reaching us in the form of phones or our technology and devices, and life has gotten quite complicated if you compare it to what life was 50, 60 years ago, right? And so the needs of us as a community have also changed, right? Earlier, there used to be a time when, grandparents, great grandparents would go to work, and once they leave work, it's done. There is automatically distance, right? It's not that whoever that they're working for is going to call the middle of the night unless they're a doctor to say, please come and attend to this. But in this day and age, we don't have that luxury anymore. It's something that we have to really work hard to fight for and ensure that we've created that boundary, which is what we would call self-care, right? And like we said, self-care is very different. It could be very different for different people. So for what your parents or grandparents would have taken as self-care would just simply be ensuring that I'm eating my meals on time, right? Those were just a way of life, whereas now we're looking at it as self care because the context has changed so much. And so we have to really take that into consideration.
Or then right, so it makes me think that it's also about when you say it's become more complex, it's also that at the individual level, we're trying to do and be so much more. So, like,
Yes.
for example, if if my grandmom or mom was stay at home, but there were already boundaries that I need to take care of. So those
Right.
boundaries were inbuilt into how families and societies were structured.
Right.
Whereas now, everyone is expected to do almost everything. Whether it's a man or a woman, you're expected to wear multiple hats. And is that a source of stress, and is that a trigger for needing self care among people?
It is a source of stress. It is. I also understand that something that we work really hard as a community to ensure that everyone is able to share the load, both at work and at home. But it is an additional layer that we have to be very cognizant of in our day to day, right? It is an added stress as well. So it definitely is something that will drive the need to ensure that there are good boundaries, whether it is I I can't necessarily leave my work always at work, but I ensure that I turn off notifications or I'm being very clear that unless it's an emergency, don't reach out to me, right? Evaluating, prioritizing. Those are things that I can do to ensure that I'm able to maintain a balance. Work-life balance is also an important aspect of self-care because it's ensuring that I'm able to spend time on my physical self as well as with my social relationships and my mental health. So it is a combination of a lot of those things.
Okay. Um, so when we talk about we have to set the boundaries, so then that puts a lot of the onus on me, right? It means that sure, my job, I sign up for a job and that's supposed to be 8 hours, and I might say, all right, 9 hours. But why isn't it their job to say that, okay, listen, after this time, you don't have to come into work or you don't have to work on it? If everything is on me, then the perception is also that I'm not living up to it. So when society gives me one expectation of hardworking, like the recent cases we've been reading about in the papers, and on the other hand says that you have to set your own boundaries, it becomes very difficult for me to be able to choose where that boundary would be, or how do I deal with myself, my conflicting needs of wanting to live up to this expectation but also wanting to be healthy, or stay sane almost. So how would you think we should approach a situation like this, which I think most of us are in?
Again, a very difficult question in the current times as well, simply because it's not easy. It's just not easy to be able to manage all of these things. It does involve a lot of effort. And because, as you said, right, the definition of self-care means that I have agency over my life, right? I'm able to choose. And I'm sorry, are we here? Has my internet gone off?
No, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Sorry. Right. So what we're saying is that there is a lot of onus on me because it's a scale that I'm doing for myself. And what works for me may not necessarily work for someone else. The onus is on me as being the agency or having the agency in my life to take control and to direct what I need to happen in a way that works for me, right? I do have ambition, right, in terms of my career, in terms of all that. It's great to have ambition. It's absolutely necessary. But it's also important that I need to know what are my needs. Am I being cognizant of my needs or my boundaries being constantly pushed every time I'm in various situations, right? Unless I'm cognizant that this is being pushed, I won't be able to take the necessary steps, right? For example, if I know that I've started a new job, for example, and I understand that this is, let's say there's a 9 hour workday that's expected of me. I will also say I'm willing to put in those 9 hours. Once in a while, maybe it moves on to 10 hours, 10 and a half hours. But if I'm noticing that every day for the past 1 month, I've been sitting in office for about 10, 11 hours, and it doesn't seem to be coming to an end, right? It's not that there is a certain project that's happening. It just seems to be a way of life. And that's not helping me because I realize that I'm not able to catch up with my friends. I'm not able to be home in time for dinner with my family. I'm not able to take time for myself. And it is impacting me. Unless I acknowledge that there is an impact, I can't take the necessary steps. Whether those necessary steps are having a conversation with my manager or with the team, or it is restructuring the things that I need to do in a certain way, I won't be able to do that unless I'm aware that this boundary or this boundary violation is constantly happening.
Okay, so boundary violation is both ways then. So my external, whoever and whatever has demands on my time and resources, them placing those demands, and
Correct.
violation that I allow by saying that all right, I'll do it for you. I'll give up sleep and I'll do this. So boundary violation is not necessarily outside in. I have to be.
Absolutely.
It's up to me as well. It's
Yes.
a
Am I also enabling that in some way? Very unknowingly or without conscious intention in that sense, but it
okay.
is happening. I'm not being cognizant. I'm not being mindful. I'm not taking the necessary steps. Right. And that's a
Okay.
little bit me being unfair to myself as well.
It's so easy to say, it's so hard to practice. Yeah.
100%.
Tell me now, before I step into discussing this further, the rest of you who are on the call, I know we've muted you so that the discussion flows smoothly, but please, any thoughts, questions that come to mind, put it in the chat window and we will pick it up as we go along. Right. So coming back to our discussion, Sarah, so in even in your last few minutes, you've covered two or three things which are, I don't want to call them hurdles, or they, although they are, but these are things that we have to consciously, like in your video game, you have to shoot at it and break it down if you want to move to the next level, right? So, could we spend a little time talking about what are the various types and specifics of these things that hold us back? Systemic and individually, what are the things that are barriers to us acting on our own need for self care, and what are the things that we that are stopping us or holding us back?
I think the biggest one is that I don't understand what self care is, right? Or I've gotten maybe a slightly unrealistic view of what self care could actually be, which is what we kind of clarified initially as well, right? Self care can be anything that works for you. So if I don't know what I'm supposed to do for self care, I'm not going to be able to do it, right? The other is it feels like a lot of effort. Again, this goes back to because I don't know what it actually is or what how I can mold it to fit my life. It feels like too much of an effort to sit and figure it out. So I'd rather just focus on everything else that I know for sure as of now. Right. Sometimes it's about I don't have time or that misunderstanding that I don't have time. I need to earn self care is also a very common thing that I've
Ah,
heard in even with my clients. Right. I
right,
will
right,
work so that I can relax and unwind at the end of the day. So it's like, no, you can relax and unwind even if you've not spent a
right.
full day working, right? The Saturday and Sunday is not a make up for Monday to Friday. The Saturday and Sunday, regardless of what you've done Monday to Friday, right?
Oh, that sense of whether it is a fundamental right or it is something that I have to earn. Okay.
Correct. Right. So very often it's unless I've done enough effort, I shouldn't take time to focus on myself because then that's me being selfish. Right? Selfishness versus self-care versus self-indulgence versus selflessness are concepts that keep coming up when we have these conversations, at least in my therapy sessions with clients, right? When we say, I can't be selfish, I'm only focusing on myself. And the opposite of that sometimes is interpreted as being selfless, that I don't think about myself at all, I think only about others, which is helpful at times, not really sustainable, but
Would it help if we looked at it like a continuum? So, for example, in that example that you took earlier about I've taken on a new job,
mm,
and I say that look, maybe for the first 6 months, vis-a-vis the job and vis-a-vis my relationship with my employer, I'm going to
mm.
be selfless and I'm going to spend 12 hours a day at work or whatever it takes, because I think I will do that to get mastery, and then I will slowly move to becoming, if not selfish 100%, so it's not a 100-0, but it may start off with 100-0, and then I might say, okay, I'll move slowly and then reach a balance when I think I've mastered the role, and then I want to be able to be stricter about my boundaries. Is that a healthy way to look at it, to see it like a dial that you can dial up and down and say, now I want to do this, now I want to do that, in different parts of my life?
The struggle is sometimes we lose sight of that dial, right? Or the controls to the dial end up being with someone else. And then wrestling that control back becomes difficult. Just to go back to the work example, right? Just think about how we would approach it in, say, the corporate world. If you have someone who's putting in 12 hours a day, that will be encouraged, sometimes very subtly, right?
Yes.
This is an employee who's doing great, they're showing so much of potential, so much of proactivity, fantastic initiative taking. It unknowingly tends to encourage maintaining that same behavior of putting in 12 hours, sometimes at the cost of other aspects. Because when we're at work, and work is a major part of our day, and it definitely adds to our sense of identity. And so if I've created an identity around something else, weaning away from that is really difficult. Right? So if I
Okay.
have to take it as 100 to 0, it becomes really difficult. Right? Maintaining some sort of a balance is a lot more sustainable, I would say. Sorry, you were saying.
No, no, I was just thinking, based on what you said, that so when we get into situations, and a lot of this happens when we get into a new situation, whether it's a new job, new role, parenthood, marriage, whatever, different kinds of new location, different things that change our environment, as it were, and we're keen to make a good impression in, or do well in that one new role. We tend, or I know a lot of us tend to get into it saying that, look, this is the beginning. I've just had a baby. So now nothing else matters. And then any stepping back from that makes you feel guilty. And I
Correct.
suppose that's the mirror of what you were saying with the job.
Yes.
So then, would you suggest then that that's not the ideal way to do it? Always go into it with the end in mind, and don't start with any extreme, is what you're saying, right? Go into it with a realistic boundary, and don't
Yes.
start off by not having a boundary, or violating it yourself.
Correct. Correct. I think the word that I use very often in my conversations with clients is it a sustainable practice? Right? If I'm going to be putting in 12 hours, 13 hours every day, can I continue to do that without a break? Right? Or can I continue to do
Right.
that for the next 6 to 7 months and honestly say that, yeah, no, that's fine. No problem whatsoever. Right?
Okay.
Any new parent would also say, even though you've heard that the new parents, first couple of months, there's going to be a upending in terms of your schedule, but no new parent has been able to go through nights and nights without sleep and sustain.
Right.
Right? There has to be some other support that comes in to ensure that all of the members of that family, parent and the child, are able to continue sustainably, right, taking care of themselves. So sustainability, I think, is really important word that I would use here.
Okay. I was also just thinking that maybe we should take a step back. We did talk about what self care is, but I remember in a subsequent part of the conversation, you also said that self care is unique to the individual. What it is
Correct.
for you is different from what it is for me. Could
Correct.
you take some examples or talk about that to help us understand a little bit more detail, a little bit more nuance of what self care is or isn't?
Right. Just to drive home the difference in what self-care can look like for different people, one of my favorite examples and one that I use very often with my clients is people on vacation, right? Everyone knows a friend who goes on vacation and wants to wake up early in the morning to see the sunrise and go hiking and trekking and do a lot of outdoor activities. And then everyone also has a friend who, because they're on vacation, they said, don't bother looking out for me before 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
You're just not going to find me, right? And
Right.
don't expect me to be outside of the four walls of wherever I am. I'm going to be indoors, right? Both work for them, right? It's about what really needs, what do you need? Right? What feeds your body, what feeds your needs at that point. What really helps out is what self-care can be. So it could be very, very different things, right? For some people, it's about ensuring that they take time every week to go out to do some physical activity, like a strenuous physical activity, like hike, right? Every week I go out and have a hike. Every week, or as many options as I can, I go and try and run a marathon. And for me, that is a part of self-care because it ensures that I'm maintaining a good physical health regime, right? For others, self-care can be I try and cook up new dishes, right? And I'm experimenting in the kitchen. And being in the kitchen and cooking up dishes is allowing me to really rest. And I feel a sense of peace and calm and a state of flow when I'm cooking. Whatever works is absolutely fine for you, as long as it's a healthy behavior and it doesn't feed into any possible negative effects on the body, right? Such as watching TV, for example, can feel great. And once in a while, watching TV honestly regularly is also fine. But if I'm binge watching, if I'm spending 6 7 8 hours in the day watching TV, and I can't really term that as self-care because it's not going to be rejuvenating to me.
So it isn't that anything that makes me feel good is self care. That's not the equation then.
Yeah, no, it's not a blanket statement, right?
Right.
I think in moderation, if I can use it and it's helping my health, or it's something I can do sustainably, that's the impact is okay. But it shouldn't contribute to addictive behavior. So substance use, for example, can't be termed as self-care, right? Spending hours and hours on social media can't necessarily be termed as self-care.
Okay. So I think we're getting a sense of what this animal is. One is boundaries, the
Hmm.
other is balance, right? So
Right.
boundaries are important. Balance is important. I may need medication to get my, I don't know, sugar under control. But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean I'm completely dependent on it and can't balance and can't indulge in something that I need. So it's
Correct.
about balance.
Right.
I can watch a good movie, but I can't watch three movies in a day on a regular
Absolutely.
basis. So boundaries is one, balance is one. The other message I'm hearing from you is awareness and
Hmm.
consciousness of
Hmm.
myself and others. Could you help us understand that bit a little more?
Right. I think it's also important to understand that there are about six different aspects of self care, right? First is the mental self care. What do I do to ensure that my thoughts are supporting me? We tend to be our worst critics. And so if I'm constantly berating myself for every mistake that I've made, I'm not necessarily going to end the day on a happy note, right? No one has ever said, so proud of you, you've done a horrendous job, right? No one has gone to sleep at peace with that thought. It's going to keep you up. The second aspect is going to be your emotional health. What am I going to do to maintain emotions? All of the emotions that we feel all have a purpose, right? Including anxiety, including sadness, including all of those emotions. What is that emotion saying to me? And how can I balance it if it goes out of control? Right? There has to be an up and down in emotions, and because it's necessary, each emotion has a role. But if it goes beyond that threshold level, it means it's unhelpful. How am I going to manage unhelpful levels of anger, for example? Right? Where I feel like I need to just throw things, right? I'm at that level of rage. What can I do to bring that back under control is the second aspect of self-care. Then we've got the physical self-care, right? So ensuring your basic functioning in the day is maintained. Sleep, hygiene, sorry, so yeah, sleep, hygiene, exercise, things like that. We've also got social self-care. We are social beings, and so it's important that we're able to take time to nurture relationships with others as well as also nurture relationship with myself, right? Both aspects are really important. So am I taking time to ensure both are um, given their due credit or due space rather? And last, we have also spiritual self-care. It spiritual doesn't necessarily have to be a formal practice like religion. It could also be very informal, whether that is more along the lines of, say, a gratitude meditation, or whether it is along the lines of anything that you do to connect with a larger power, if that works for you, or any other practice that allows you to just center within yourself. Right. So all of these aspects of self-care are all necessary to ensure that you are able to sustain across the day.
Fabulous. So these different, so you have to look at all these aspects, and within those, you have to look at what your boundary is now, what it may be. It may change, so keep looking
Okay.
at it.
Yes.
Look at the balance. And I
Mm.
like what Devika picked up, that that every emotion is valid. So there's no judgment, whether
Correct.
on me or on anyone else. If I normally wake up at 5, if I want to sleep till 8 today, I don't have to apologize. If that's what I need, I need it, right? So that, okay, that's great. Um, there was one more aspect that came up a couple of times, which I'd like to pick up and elaborate on a little, which is that each
Mm-hmm.
of these, even once you get this template in place, there is effort to
Correct.
start. So that, if you could talk a little about that effort, and what are the things that might hold us back from it? What are the things that we should be ready to overcome to
Right.
start practice in self-care? If you could elaborate on that a little.
Absolutely. I think I draw this back to how habits are also created. Is that a habit is created only if it is repeated over a time, and also if the behavior itself that I'm trying to repeat is easy, doable, and it actually gives me the reward that I'm looking for, right? If I'm putting in all this effort towards self-care, right? Let's say that I've heard from my circle that you have to do 10 minutes of deep breathing every day. It is fantastic and it will give you 100% results. Okay. I've put in all the effort. I've really, really tried. Right. I figured out time. I sat 10 minutes every day, but I can't really sit and focus on my breathing for 10 minutes. That behavior is then not going to be sustained because it's not giving me the reward that I was expecting. I don't feel at peace or I don't feel grounded after 10 minutes. I feel really antsy after 3 minutes because I can't sit and I'm only watching the clock waiting for the next 7 minutes to be up. I'm really motivated, I'm really dedicated, but it's not giving me the results, and so it's not going to be maintained. The self care activity that I do has to ensure that I feel that sense of peace or calm or relaxation or rejuvenation at the end of that activity. That's when it's going to be maintained. If that's not there, maybe I need to modify the activity itself in some way.
Okay. So, how do you learn to listen to yourself or understand yourself to be able to come to these are conclusions, right? To say that, yeah, no, no, wait for one more week and see how it works, or hang in there and it'll be okay, or yeah, this is not working, let's move on. It's okay not to like this. All these things where it's a decision I have to take about myself, and that's a big part of self care. Right? So, how do you build that self awareness? Any tips for our listeners?
I wish there was a formula that I could give you. Unfortunately, there isn't any formula like that. It is a little bit of trial and error, right? It is about if I'm trying something new, just like you would start a new job, for example, I wouldn't say, oh, if I don't like it in 1 month, let's quit and move on to the next job. You would give it some time. Right? You would say, okay, maybe it's the first month, maybe it's something else. I'll try again. I'll try something different within that 1 month to make some changes. So self care is a little bit like that. If I've just started new behavior, I may not see the results immediately. Right?
Okay.
It might take some time because for me to be able to see all of those results, it also I need to work through all of those barriers that were there in my mind about what self-care is. Is it okay for me to do this? Am I doing this correctly? What will someone else think about me if I tell them that this is what my self-care is like? Right? Should I be doing something else? Right? Is it okay for me to have all these thoughts? I have to navigate through all of these potential internal barriers until I'm able to say, you know what, I've been doing this for 3, 4 weeks. It's not feeling fantastic, but I am starting to enjoy doing this. I'm feeling good. Or maybe a certain behavior, a certain activity can help in certain situations and not in others. Right? For example, deep breathing might work when I need a quick break in the middle of a difficult meeting. It might not work at the end of the day when I'm looking to recharge myself. Right? At the end of the day, maybe talking to a friend is what really helps. So with time and effort, I might be able to, move it around like chessboards on a piece. Okay,
Right.
no, like a puzzle, right? This fits here better, that fits there better, right? Maybe to move it around, and it could change over the course of time as context and your life situation changes as well, which is also perfectly okay.
Okay. One of the questions that's come in, I think, fits right here, which is that. So these are ways that I will work with myself, but I'm in a family. I'm in an environment where I have 5, 6, 7 other people or 3 people with me, and they're not they don't generally believe that these are necessary. They believe that your regular routine, something we touched upon at the beginning, that your regular routine should take care of all of this. So one of my biggest hurdles, and this is what this person says, my biggest hurdle is that the people around me don't think it's a good use of time. They think I'm being silly in spending time on sketching or doodling or things like that, because that's what I want to do. So how do I'm not even, she says, I'm not even going to worry about them, but how do I coach myself to not worry about them? I can't continue. I can't get any benefit from doodling if I'm going to be worried that, oh, they're going to think I'm silly.
Right. So just to
So,
clarify, you
any,
mentioned that they've identified a behavior that helpful, but maybe
that's right.
they
Doodling,
do it
that's what it
at
was.
home, it doesn't really work because of family
It
context
doesn't
or
work because
situational
people
context.
around are, yes, that's right.
Right. Maybe we look at it and doing it at a different spot or doing it at a different time when maybe I don't, so many family members or external forces are not as prevalent, right? So maybe if I'm, traveling to or from work or college, can I doodle then? It's giving me an outlet for my emotions and to get through the day without that excess pressure of my family's opinions, which is kind of difficult to navigate through, right? So maybe, like we said, it's so personalized, you can modify it to fit in with whatever it is that you need. Important thing is, and I'm appreciative of this person because they realize this is really helpful, but I'm kind of stuck at where, how to fit it in, right?
I think
Something,
her underlying problem is also anything that I want to do. If how others will see it is more
Correct.
important to me, or as important as how I experience it. How do I conquer that? Because she brought it up as a, this is a limiting factor for me. Anything that I
Correct.
want to do, this is a limiting factor. So I think she's really looking for things like, how do I how do I how do I place myself as higher priority than other people?
It may not, higher priority is not necessarily the word that I use. Maybe look at the same priority, right?
Okay.
It's about looking at more assertiveness, that this behavior that I'm doing is important, even if you don't really understand it. It doesn't take away from the benefit that this behavior is bringing to me, or how the benefit that I reap from this particular behavior. So when we're talking about assertiveness, we're saying my needs are, or your needs are important, let's say, or your opinions are important, but my needs and my opinions and my thoughts are just as important. So I hear you that you don't see this as valuable, and that's okay. It might not be valuable to you, but I still see a lot of merit in doing this. Right? We may, when it comes to, for example, family in that context, we may not necessarily be able to be as forthright with it. Some families this is possible, some families this might not be possible. Even if it's not possible, to be very clear with yourself that just because they don't like it doesn't mean that I can't do it. Right? We're all part of families, and family members sometimes do things that we don't like, right?
Yeah.
Our parents, our siblings might do things we don't like. They may or may not necessarily incorporate our opinion, right? This is not tit for tat, but to say that there can be those both things that are possible, right? You could do something I don't appreciate, but we're still able to maintain a family relationship. So it's okay.
So it's about being okay with the discomfort of
Yes,
not, lack of approval or any of that. And I
yes,
assume that is something that will pervade a lot of self-care activities, because they only you see the benefit of it. And it is
correct.
unique enough to be relevant to you, and therefore it's entirely for you to take a call on.
100%.
Right. Okay. Um, Maybe we should start talking a little about what kind of steps can I take? What kind of activities can I do? I mean, meditation, journaling, going to the spa, and there's so many things that come up. And unfortunately, the first thing anyone talks about when you talk about self care is spa and weekend away, um, which are really big ticket items. But what would you suggest we start with, given that everyone's busy and you have a daily life that's already 26 hours in 24? How would you suggest, how would you recommend we start? What kind of activities?
It could be, again, anything that really works for you, right? But something as simple as just maybe looking at the five senses that you have and say, what are the three things that I saw today that make me feel good? Right? What are the three things that I really enjoy listening to? What are the three nice things that I heard today? What are some three things that I really like to feel against my skin? What are the three things I really like to taste or smell? Food and non-food items could be separate here, right? So you're essentially just creating more opportunities to notice positive experience in the day, and in that sense also allowing for opportunities to be grateful to experience these things, which contribute to emotional and mental self-care, right?
Okay.
So this doesn't have to be a behavior per se that someone else is aware of that you're doing, to be a wholly
Right.
mental based activity.
And this could also be non intrusive in the sense that you don't have to go and do something. It could be wearing colors that I like. It
Yes,
could be music in the background when I'm doing what I want. It could be
yes,
stuff. So it's at multiple levels
yes,
also.
yes. It could be something as simple as someone who identifies as a woman, and because I like men's perfume in the store, I'm wearing men's perfume. I just like the smell of it, and
Yeah.
that makes me feel good, right? Even though I fully identify as a woman. So, it can be as simple as that. It's not very out there or very prominent, but it's something that I really like, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. And that's one aspect of my self care.
Yeah, Nafisa saying that it mostly starts at being aware. I think we could underline. I had an uncle who used to say, yes, you can underline that with six colors and put the searchlights on it, and that's right. So it's like that. You can highlight it in 20 ways, and that's it.
Yes, yes,
But I suppose it's also awareness at how I feel, awareness of choice,
mm,
awareness also at different levels, just to
correct.
make sure how it does impact me or it doesn't.
Correct, correct. And it's also okay to really start with what would be most easier to be aware of, like say my physical strength, my physical state, right? For example, even if all of us were to take 15 seconds right now and just bring awareness to the position of my body right now. Am I noticing any tension? Am I sitting a bit odd? Do I need to reposition myself so that my posture feels better? Right? Even this is a simple act of self care because I'm noticing what my body needs, or I'm trying to bring awareness to my body and putting in the effort to give it whatever it needs right now. Right? Maybe I'm sitting in an odd angle and need to straighten my back or my shoulders. Right? Maybe I'm feeling tension here, I need to ease it out. Something as simple as that is fine to start off with for those that are really struggling with self care as well. And then from there, it helps to build that awareness and move it to my emotional state, my spiritual state, or my mental state. It becomes easier to generalize it from there.
Okay. And is this a practice that you recommend? Because the one about your different senses and making sure that you're doing something to acknowledge and appreciate what stimulus you're getting. That is that a standard kind of practice that we can all look at doing? So even the first step might be on my way to work, I will stop and look at look for one color that I like, one something like that. Is that a practice that you
Right.
would recommend we do?
This is essentially a mindfulness practice, right? I'm choosing to be more involved and present in the moment or in my day as opposed to getting caught up in worries about the future or hurts from the past. I'm just choosing to be here and in the now, and using your senses to root yourself in the present is a mindfulness practice, which is very, very powerful, right?
Okay.
And very easy to do in terms of effort. Right? Have to look around you. You can wherever everyone else is sitting, right? Just look around you. What all do I see? What are the different sizes, shapes, textures that I can notice visually? Right? What are the different sounds that I can hear? Apart from our audio, obviously, outside, what are the other sounds? What are the smells? What is my feet feeling like against the floor? Right? These are things that help you bring awareness to what my body is telling me, what are my needs. And once I can tune into that, it becomes easier to hear it even without conscious effort.
Okay, so these are good ways to start being aware of myself and be recognizing what I'm seeing, feeling, thinking, all of that. Now, it's fairly common. It's written about quite a lot about how it feels to be somewhere along the spectrum of not entirely healthy. When you feel you're not interested, or you feel down, you don't have energy, things like that. If I'm at that level and I start this, but I don't feel like it's doing much, would you have any practices, any thoughts that you would recommend that we can do, even if I'm say, so this is the first thing was if I don't have much time and I just want to start something. But
Hmm.
next, if I'm willing to put in a little bit of time and I do want a little more result, I want to be able to invest and reap from this practice seriously. One or
Hmm.
two ideas of what we can start doing, what any of us can start doing on that.
I
Any
think that
practice would help. Yeah.
so mindfulness thing is absolutely great. I think it'll also tie back to what are the needs that I've identified for myself, right? Am I
Okay.
someone, for example, if I've identified that I want to be able to spend more time with my friends, right? I'm lacking on social self-care is a bit poor right now in my life. So I can say, okay, what do I need to do to build that social connection? Right? Meeting up with friends over the weekend, calling them, right, every day, or sending a text message to catch up with a friend. Hi, I thought about you. Right? Those are also things that can help to bridge that gap that is currently present in my life in terms of where I am and what are the needs that I've identified. Right? When it
Okay.
comes to, for example, mental health, maybe I'm saying I'm really struggling with a lot of different things that I'm not able to figure it out. Maybe I need to speak to a professional, right?
Okay.
Maybe I'm not ready to speak to a professional. Maybe I need to do something that's a step below that, right? I need
Right.
some structured support, which is maybe a step short of therapy. And what could that be? Maybe I explore, right? It kind of tie back to what am I looking for. But broad activities in general that are really helpful would be journaling, would be starting a gratitude practice, right? One of the things I tell my clients kind of very regularly to do is every day at the end of the day, just note down three things that you are grateful for today, or three wins for the day,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Big or small doesn't matter. It just has to be a win. A win could
So
be I'm coming in from Mumbai, so the win is I got my train on time. Big win for me, right? I
right.
reached work on time because of fantastic. That works. That's a very legitimate win. It could also be a big thing, right? I had a successful appraisal conversation. Fantastic, right? It doesn't have to be the biggest, it can also be the very, very small things as well. So journaling is great, taking time out to take a break every day in the middle of the workday. All of us have half an hour, 1 hour that is allotted to us for a break time. Make sure to use that break as a break, as opposed to you think, oh, I have 5 minutes and I'll eat and then I'll use 25 minutes to catch up on the additional work. Take that time to actually take a break, talk with your colleagues, or if that's not something you'd really enjoy, spend time with yourself, whatever is required
Okay.
to give yourself that sense of rejuvenation.
Wow. Okay. I'm very conscious of the time that we have left. Anyone in the group, would you like to ask any questions, any comment, any questions you'd like to ask? And then maybe we'll pick up one or two questions that have been sent in to us. But I do want to give people on the call a chance first. Now, first, Mohammed, I know you've been commenting and being a part of our discussion in a non vocal way. So thank you very much. Any thoughts, any questions? Okay, while you get your thoughts together, there's one question that's come in saying that um, is there is there greater or lesser benefit to doing to practicing self-care alone or with others? Is it like in some habit building and so on, we hear about accountability partners and things like that. So is there anything specific about whether doing it alone or doing it with others, is there a better or worse kind of thing?
I think self-care in itself is a discipline. And so it's always helpful to have. So some people are very internally motivated, right? They don't need an external accountability partner. They're able to figure it out on their own, right? And if that's what's working for you, great. But I really, what for some other people, they need an accountability partner, right? They need someone to hold them accountable. Say, did you do this? Did you do that? And that's maybe what they need. So depending on which bucket you fall into, you can maybe use to track for yourself. If I'm someone who doesn't need an external person to tell me, right, did you eat on time, or did you, go for therapy this week, or did you do XYZ this week as part of your self-care, maybe I can figure out a way to track it for myself. Just for me being accountable to myself, right? Whether that is using some sort of app that allows you to track your goals, right? They say this is an activity that I've inputted and I'm tracking that every day I was able to do this depending on whatever frequency I had decided, right? For others for whom maybe they need that additional support from someone else, uh, you can also let them know what is the support that you need from them, right? I need you to ask me every week, right? Did I go in for therapy, let's say? Because I have a client whose friend does that for them. Right, to make sure that, oh,
Okay.
did you keep your therapy appointment? What was it? What was it like for you? Did you have, was it a good experience? What did you learn? So that helps to ensure engagement as well, right? And also creates a positive experience. It's also helpful to encourage those behaviors in others when you see them, right? If you've just going back to the earlier example that we mentioned, there is a colleague who's been consistently working 12 hours a day. They're here before everyone else, they leave after everyone else. And once in a while, you've noticed that they've left on time, right? Instead of making a sarcastic comment of, oh, today is a half day, or what's going on with you, saying, well, it's great that you're leaving on time, and I'm so excited that you have plans this evening, right? And I'm looking forward to hearing all about them tomorrow, right? We're encouraging behaviors, and that could also help to maintain the self-care that we're engaging in.
Oh, I love this. So, commitment to self care is not just about commitment to me caring for myself, it's also to help others recognize the need for it and do something themselves.
Yes.
I think that's fabulous, and that's a great note on which to say. Any other questions, anyone? Any comments? There's so much more that we could
I,
continue talking
I
about.
agree.
I do have very silly question, actually, Sarah. This is Devika, and I'm sorry I'm not got my camera on because I have poor connectivity here.
No problem.
Um, uh, I do believe that saying no to things that distress me is also a form of self-care. But can you help us to understand um, how we can turn that saying no into how we can say no without antagonizing other people, and without creating a reputation for ourselves as someone who's not willing to step up.
I think given my experience, no one likes to hear a no at all. So I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where I've asked for something, I'm hearing a no, and I'm feeling great about it, right? It is going to be a slightly distancing experience for both parties involved. But sometimes it's important to say that it's okay, right? I'm able to deal with the situation as it is happening right now. The second is to say, so that's just saying it's okay to say no, and it's okay for that experience to not be a positive one, or a pleasant one, let's say, right? Not everyone will understand the no and take it in their stride. Some people will have some amount of pushback. What really helps though is saying, you know what, I'm not able to honor this request or demand that you've had. Can we do an alternate one instead? Right? Is there a midway that we can reach? So instead of being passive or aggressive, we're looking at being more assertive. That you need this task to be fulfilled, and I appreciate that, but this is where my resources are at currently. So this is the mid pay. Can we find a way to reach to a mid path between the two of us? Right? That ensures your needs are also met as well as my needs are met. Right? So that could be slightly a way to ease in to being more assertive wherever is required.
Thank you, Sarah.
No problem.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I know that we do spend first, Sarah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This is a lovely discussion, and when we write up on it, I think we will put a lot of this together when we write up a note on this and share it. So thank you very very much.
Thank you for
Um,
having me again.
yeah. I think now someone from Amaha would like to come and speak about Amaha. Is that person available?
Yes, and
Yeah.
that would
Great.
be me, Shubha. Yes.
Hi.
Right. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yes. Yes, all well. Thank you so much. And it has been very lovely conversation. Thank you so much, Sarah, Shubha, for bringing this topic to our attention, right? And something that really needs a very, I think, a huge shout out, right? And so anything and everything that we do always has a starting point, right? And so far that I personally very much believe that self care is where we can start in terms of especially mental health, which maybe we'll just keep it at there, right? So and thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing that to my personal attention. Also, that it is not just maybe physical or mental health, but other aspects of wellness also that you can actually think about from a self care perspective, right? And thank you so much, Sarah, for that. And that is maybe my biggest takeaway from this. Right, and especially us, Amaha, being a mental health organization, right, and me also having to be in the growth side of it. Also, I always try to maybe talk to when I talk to my clients, or even if it is maybe individuals that I speak to. Also, maybe even my closest group. Also, we always talk about self care in terms of a starting point that we spoke about, right? And especially Sarah, the trial and error method that you spoke about, right? So we a lot of us don't realize that every day is just a trial and error for us, right? So and being aware of maybe small points of our journey every day and being a little bit more mindful will I think can go a long way than maybe trying to maybe do a lot of things in terms of self-care itself, right? I think that is where my self-care had started, which is being more mindful about the positive and negative emotions, and especially the emotions that I get also, right? Maybe I felt angry at that point. Why did I feel that way, right? That I think that can also be a very good starting point, and something, if this helps really anybody, I think that would be I think an amazing point again, right? So I think for organizations also, it is very important maybe to again start somewhere, and that can also be at a self care for employees, right? So we as an organization, when we have this self care is actually very much stitched together with our services also in terms of maybe the organizational services that we give. Always we split it by three different parts, right? So always self-care and mild concern starts at the beginning, and then maybe moderate to a severe level also, right? So all of that is something that we take care of. So I'll just maybe 2 minutes. I'll quickly take you all of you through maybe a small presentation, which may be a one slider, so that you are maybe aware of what we do as an organization, and when it may be something that you can stitch together to all employees, where maybe for those employees, self care can be from Amaha side, right? So let me just share my screen here. Uh, yes, right. Uh, yes. Is my screen visible? If anybody could confirm.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
visible. It is visible.
Thank you, Shubha. Right. So, as is an organization, we bring an entire mental health ecosystem in place, right? Why do we call ourselves an ecosystem? Is also because we, like I said, we cater with all points of mental health, right? Be it as simple as maybe not being aware where self care comes into place, to a moderate level where psychology or psychologists like Sarah can be of help, and to a severe level also where maybe psychiatrists might be of help, right? So all of that stitched together could be an action plan for the organization, but always the best part is, or the majority of the part comes in for the awareness building, right? So that is where all of these components that helps us bring in that ecosystem with much of an awareness also on the organization, right? So where we have therapy, psychiatry for sure, with moderate and severe aspects of mental health, right? And the personalized self-care tools and resources, where we have an amazing app. To be very frank, please go ahead and download the application from App Store or Play Store. And this is not definitely that this is something that I believe in, right? Because when I want to say something, I want to definitely believe in that, right? So this application has been very helpful for me as an individual, right? So there is a lot of personalized self-care tools, resources that we have, personalized programs that we have in the application, right? For example, maybe tackling stress is something that I go through maybe on a daily basis. I have a 28-day program which takes my assessment, which gives me a personalized journey for me for 28 days so that I can maybe consistently work on myself, right? So consistency becomes maybe very another important factor as well, right? So the app takes care of a lot of self-care, and it's a very structured and systematic way also. It is not just all over the place, but we have put all of our efforts into, especially our in-house team, and all of us actually put a lot of effort into making it a plan which works out really well, right? Rather than just being all over the place as well, right? So that is where the application comes into place, and then we bring in the entire awareness campaigns, right? So awareness is the most important part also, where throughout the year we keep on working on the awareness as well, right? So through webinars that we do, workshops that we do, in-person engagement activities, right? If it is online activities. So a lot of these activities that constantly we do. So the and very mild also, right? So because all of us have seen also that people, when they hear mental health, there's always been in a place where maybe, oh, I don't want mental health, or I'm not in that category is most what most people actually would think, right? But are you in a category of physical health? Is that even a question, right? So I mean, because that doesn't make any sense. No, mental health lives with us every day, and as long as we have a mind, there is mental health, right? So that is where maybe on the smaller part of it, where we share with employees also to realize and understand, maybe understand more about mental health, and just being okay to talk about mental health in an open forum as well, right? Maybe being okay to actually speak to my friends about mental health, right? Not thinking that maybe they would judge me, right? So that is a lot of, we go a long way to actually bring that information to the employees, and we have been successful so far with a lot of organizations that we work with. So if there are any HR professionals here, or if you would want to maybe suggest these kind of services to your friends, or maybe to organizations that you work with, please go ahead. We can always bring the best customized program or features to you. And very importantly, I'm sorry, I'm taking maybe a little bit more time. I think it is worth it. So we have a QR code here for all of us attendees here, for participants who, if you wish to maybe take a therapy session or a psychiatric session from us, right? You have a QR code which is giving you a customized 10% off from any therapy session that you can actually take, and that can also be a good start, right? And we don't even have to actually think about it as a therapy. It's just maybe talking out loud to, right, maybe another person who can be completely subjective towards what you do, what you think about, and what you do as well, right? And that can be a good start as well. So I'm just gonna stop here. Thank you everyone for your time, right? And thank you for this opportunity as well, NHRDN team.
Thank you, Nafas. Thank you so much. Again, thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Devika. Thank you, everyone, for this session. If any of you, any of our participants, any of you would like to hear us run a session on any other aspect of mental health, do reach out. Send in your suggestions. One of our core missions is really to build awareness and acceptance of everything to do with mental health. So, any ideas, any thoughts, any recommendations, even any volunteers, we're very welcome to consider that. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye bye.
Sarah, thank you.